morning everybody. This is the third video about externalities, and in this one I'm going to show you how to draw the diagram and also a way of remembering the diagram. You'll remember from the first two videos that externalities, you need to think about bubbles. It's all about when there's a transaction inside the bubble, either by a consumer consuming something or by a firm manufacturing something. For your course, that's what you need to know about. It may well have impacts on people outside the bubble. And remember that these are called third parties. And third parties might be affected negatively when you've got negative externalities, or positively, positive externalities, because of something that is done within a bubble by another entity, another transaction. And the diagram that you need for this, one more thing to add in, you need to think about bubbles and you need to think about the bottom. That's the main thing you need to remember, bubbles and the bottom. And I'm going to show you on this diagram why that is. First of all, we need to label these axes. This axis here is going to show three things. It's going to be able to show price, it's going to be able to show cost, and it's also going to be able to show benefit from something happening. And on this axis, this is just going to show quantity or output on this axis, what quantity you're going to have of something being produced. And remember, benefits at the bottom. So this curve here is going to be showing marginal private benefit. Benefit at the bottom. That's the main thing to remember from this diagram, so that you remember how to draw it in the exam, because you've drawn this line and it's down here at the bottom. And you're starting off with things that are inside the bubble, the private things. The word marginal, we'll quickly look at that. Marginal, like when you have a piece of paper and you've got lines on the piece of paper, and then you have this bit down the edge, that's the margin. Marginal means an extra amount. So it means when you have an extra amount of something. And in this case, in economics, when you're talking about the marginal something, it means when you have one extra unit of something. So if you have one extra unit, what will be the private benefit of that extra unit? So that's the marginal private benefit in this case. We'll look at this more later. Then the other thing, if you're looking at private, first of all, inside the bubble, is you need to look, when you have a transaction, at what is the marginal. Again, you want to know for every additional unit of output what it will be. What is the marginal private cost? Because remember, this axis can either be showing price, cost, or benefit. So this curve here, you can read this to find out what is the marginal private cost of something. And then let's imagine that we have in this diagram a negative externality occurring. And we learnt in previous videos that if we have a negative externality, that means that something's going on inside the bubble, a transaction, and it's having a negative impact on a third party outside the bubble. And we knew that if you have a negative externality, it means that your social costs are greater than your private costs. This means that you don't just have private costs within the bubble, you have costs for people outside the bubble. And we know that when you add together private and external costs, you get social costs. So if your social costs are more than your private costs, you must have some external costs. To show this on the diagram, you need to have another cost curve, because we've established that there must be, because of this, we must have external costs. So we don't just have these private costs here, we need another curve. And what we're going to do is we're going to add on the external costs. And you always make this, it's a pivot close to the axis, okay? It's closer together near the axis. So if you do it like this, so just remember that's always a pivot. And this curve is going to show marginal social cost. And that's your diagram if you want to be showing a negative externality. This is the diagram that you would need. And I'm going to explain in the next video how you read this diagram, why it looks like this and what it means.